Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to CaptureCast 2022, a partner interview with our friends in Pella, Iowa, Central College. Chevy Freiberger, good morning to you, sir. How are you?
Good. I'm doing well. How about you, Chris?
I'm doing well. You know, South Carolina is nice this morning. We're on our way to 81 and sunny today. So how's everything in Pella?
Pella, Iowa is a bit different. The windmill is blowing hard. It's pretty windy out there, and we're getting some snow. So, but like they say, wait 15 minutes and the weather will change here in Iowa. So,
exactly. We're waiting. There was a big article this morning in the newspaper about spring break is coming. Everybody get ready. Here come the people from the north. We're really excited to have our friends and families all come visit us very soon. But thank you again for taking the time this morning. Really, really appreciate it. And I think we're going to get some really great information during our conversation. So first off, Chevy, why don't you give us a little bit of background about you and about Central and how things are going?
Sure. Well, again, I am the Dean of Enrollment Management. I've been here at Central College nearly 20 years. In this role as the dean for roughly 2 years, but in those 20 years progressively moved up into this position. We have a staff of around 8 counselors, and then we have a small operations staff that supports the work that we do. I also work directly with financial aid. We've been with Capture, gosh, Chris, you could help me with the math here, but 4 or 5 years.
Almost 5 years now, yeah.
Yeah, and we were coming off of pretty strong relationship we'd had with another client, more big volume, again, an approach that worked for us initially, but as we started seeing declining returns on conversion and yield, really started to ask ourselves, there's something else better out there. So we had been in conversation with Capture and then have been seeing great increases since then.
That's great. Let's talk about that shift a little bit. So when you go back and you start to think about when you guys were looking to, obviously research different vendors and things like that, what kinds of issues were you looking to solve? Was it top of the funnel, application development, yield, all the above? I mean, just depends on where you are in the process, but what problem were you really looking to solve?
Yeah, it was a little bit of all of that, Chris. I mean, we've got a good operation here. We've got great training. We've got a great communications team, and we were finding that ultimately it was yield. Our yield was tanking, and there was a pretty significant drop that we were experiencing year over year. And so what was happening is we would have a volume of applications, and we would have a volume of admits, but we weren't pushing the needle on the incoming class. And so we were creating a lot of stress was being created on the team on who am I working with, who is interested. On the very front end, our operations team was trying to process all of these applications and admits that were coming through. And then ultimately the recruiting team, again, was just kind of pulled in lots of different directions. So we started the conversation around yield. We wanted to get to a healthier spot with our yield, which we knew then would impact the number of incoming freshmen.
Yeah, that's depending upon where you are in the cycle sometimes, and looking at vendor relationships, I think a lot of times people are like, oh, yield is what's on top of mind right now. So that's what we're going to look at. So that's an interesting take on it, Chevy. I think one of the things that for our viewers, just to kind of know a little bit more about Central and how you guys are kind of structured, obviously being the Dean of Enrollment Management, you have, like you said, admissions and financial aid, but you're working really closely with your marketing team and your communications team. How is that all structured? And tell me a little bit about the relationship pre-COVID and now kind of sort of post-COVID.
Yeah, well, throughout, we've always had a really good working relationship. So we meet weekly with our communications team. We have a robust uh, list of activities that we're looking to accomplish throughout the year. And then we also have then just kind of that 7-day look. So our director of marketing and communication, again, convenes a meeting. There's a group of us from the admission team that have this meeting, and it's all mapped out. And it's obviously we can pivot and change if we need to, given what we're seeing in the data. But it's taken us a couple of cycles to iron that out. But what we have now is a really good roadmap. So we can point back to last year this time, what we're doing. We can think about messaging that we want to send. Here's what we're thinking about for 7 days between social, email, print. And then we also have that forward facing look as well. So nothing really surprises us about a print material that we were looking to get ready. So it's really increased the efficiency of what we do. And it's really allowed us to stay on brand and with those messages that are resonating with the students that are looking at Central College.
Right. And speaking of those messages, part of the behavioral intelligence platform, using Engage, you guys have a number of different pieces of dynamic content that are on play on your website. I'm going to pull up some of your popover information right now. We're going to display that on the screen. And when we're looking at this, Chevy, obviously it looks like there's a little push to move your population outside of the state of Iowa, because it appears that you have 3 different pieces of dynamic content looking at the states of Colorado, Illinois, and Arizona. So interacting with students from those specific states. But so tell me a little bit about your thought process on taking your search, obviously, and looking at out-of-state pockets and how you're identifying those, and then working back in with Engage to find those students.
Sure. So cost price is always on the mind of families and students that are looking at making a college choice. We were very creative a couple years ago in lowering our cost around $20,000. And so we want the market to know where we stand on our low annual tuition, really being transparent on the affordability of Central College. And so with that content, we're looking to remind them not only are we affordable, but we also have many, many scholarships that are available to students who apply and are admitted. As you can see, this is drawing in a group of students. We're able to identify some of those suspects and then incorporate them into our inquiry base and begin working with them on their next steps.
What I find interesting about how you have the rules set up, and obviously working with your account executive and our data team to drive this, it was interesting to see that the student didn't have to only visit once, but they had to visit twice to show that extra level of interaction and interest in Central before you were even able to show them this accessibility and affordability piece of dynamic content, which I think is awesome. And you've been able to identify an additional 161 students through this process, which is a really high conversion rate of about 5% for you guys. So tell me a little bit about the thought process on, making them jump through that extra hoop as you guys were building out this rule set.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember, Chris, that we have multiple pieces of dynamic content that are running. And so whether we are promoting a visit event, whether it's an action step to apply, file your FAFSA, our account executive really helps us keep all of that in balance. So we want to make sure that when a student is coming to our website, they are hit with the right messages at the right time. So adding that extra layer of 2 times to the website does help to get to interest level, which is important. And then it also helps balance that dynamic com flow that they would be receiving.
So let's talk about outreach from that point then, right? So we've been able to identify and help drive inquiries and applications and things like that. So let's talk about your admissions team, because being a former dean as well, I know how important it is to my counselors that they're making the right conversations with the right families at the right time. So how are you guys using Engage and the daily visitor reports to kind of curtail and find those messages for your counselors to make contact with prospective students?
Yeah, I think this is where the work that we do with Capture is so vastly different than how we used to do life prior to 2018, where I really had no idea if, as we sent a message out to our suspect pool, who was interacting with us and what were they doing where. So the behavioral engagement platform allows me to know this student has been on our website. This is where they have been researching a little more about Central. So the counselors that handle that recruitment territory know that immediately that next day. And so they have some intelligence to know, hey, I may have 3,000 inquiries, but, here are the 10 that were actually on our website last night. And here's where they live, here's what they're doing, and they can appropriately reach out and start building that relationship. So one-to-one, that relationship's being built with the counselor, and then also just at a larger institutional level, we start working with them on print comm flow and email comm flow that draws them closer to Central.
I saw some of your themes on some of your dynamic content, and I have not become an inquiry yet into your CRM, but I'm thinking about it anyway.
Mhm.
But it's interesting to see how you have taken the data that you have from Engage and the behavioral intelligence platform and how students are interacting, and then it's also informing some of your marketing efforts, some of your outreach efforts, and then also driving students to that next step. Like you just said, there is a piece of dynamic content that out there that says you need to apply.
Mhm.
There's also one that says you need to deposit, and then there's one that you need to visit. So there's all these calls to action that seem to be a very appropriate um, in their approval and how they go out to the students, and it seems to be working really well. Tell me a little bit about how your admissions team gets with your marketing team again a little bit more. How you guys are using the data from how students are interacting, or prospective students and their families are interacting with your website in real time to make those interventions, whether it's changing print media or changing a piece of dynamic content, or a piece of marketing and advertising that you're doing outside of the Engage platform.
Right. So the one-to-one work that the counselors would be doing with those students is allowing them to take, news releases we may have on academic programs, on faculty, on alumni, and then redirect that communication to those students that are engaging on the website. An example being, we've got a student who's been looking around the biology page, really interested in the outcomes of our biology students. Well, a few weeks back, maybe we sent a press release out about one of our alums that is doing some really cool research out east with a certain company. So a savvy counselor, and based on training, is going to dig back through, find that news release, and say, "Hey, Chris, I happen to work with students from Colorado. Central students are super successful, finding great jobs, and we've got this open, welcoming community. I thought you'd enjoy seeing what this student is doing with biology." So it allows them to, again, relevant messages, brand aligned messages at the right moment to those students that are expressing that interest. On a macro level, our marketing team, we're paying attention to these students too. And if we happen to see a large amount of interest in one area, we can bring that to our next meeting and say, "Hey, interestingly, we were seeing a lot of interaction with this email, and that was generating interest here." That could cause us to adjust some of our marketing for that week to to get those messages out at the right time.
Yeah, it's interesting how as a former client of Capture as well, we would see, the behavioral email series kick off, or that piece of UTM tracking that we would put on an email or something like that. We'd send it out, and we'd literally sit at the dashboard and just wait and watch
Exactly.
to watch it happen. It's like getting the lottery.
Okay. Well, and Chris, the other part of it too is, particularly with our marketing that we're doing to our non-responder pool, when we're searching maybe those younger classes to get them to click and become identified and join our inquiry pool, we're looking at, there was a spike, right? There was a lot of interest in this email. So it allows us to go back, was it the language we used? Was it the time of day? Was it the content of the message itself? Right. So we can kind of look at all of those different components, and then that can help inform us on, let's speak more this way, or this seems to have resonated at the right time. And timing's important with emails as well. Again, this is not nuclear science, but it might be wise to send an email at 1 a.m. Right. Just throwing that out there. So you can really get a sense of when your pool likes to see emails, and continue to kind of hit them at those appropriate times.
And that's the importance of the behavioral intelligence platform, though, too. So as a student is interacting at 2:00 in the morning with your stuff, because they're on Netflix and then they were playing, World of Warcraft or whatever it was until 2:00 in the morning, and they pick up their phone and like, I got to check out Central.
That's right.
And I got to finish my application, or I need to pay my deposit. They're getting served that dynamic content at the right time while they're on the site, right? So I think that's kind of how it all works together, right? And I think having a good plan in place, and knowing your shop and knowing you and your team, we know that shop is running really well because you have taken the time to do the professional development of your staff. And if anybody out there is listening and you are looking for somebody to talk to about professional development of admission staff, this is the guy right here.
Thanks, Chris.
You need to call Chevy on the phone and fly yourself out to Pella, Iowa, and have a conversation, because I think you guys are doing really, really well, and it shows. It really does. I'm going to pop up one piece of dynamic content here off, and it's from your performance dashboard. And we're not going to give away all the secret sauce today, but basically it just talks about deposits a little bit. And what I've found is, and what we're showing here is, because we're able to track from suspect to deposit, that about 14% we have a 14% conversion rate from suspect to deposit. So as we're going through the identification process, we've been able to see about 58 students have interacted with the dynamic content on the site and things like that. How has it been for you using the performance dashboard? Obviously, you're using your own dashboards too in-house. Your counselors are using, your marketing people are using it. But bringing all that data together at one point in time every week or every day or whatever it is to make those decisions, how has that helped your thought process, not only for just this year, for 2022, and we're going to talk about 23 and 24 here in a second, but looking toward the future, what does that mean to you to have all of that data right now?
Well, it's a really powerful feeling, right? Because again, you're getting actual intel that can inform your natural intuition. So, Chris, there's a lot of great enrollment professionals out there that have been doing this a while, and there's natural intuition you'll have as an administrator of like, I feel I should do this. Well, when it's backed by the data, that makes a great combination. Or if you start to realize, I'm getting a little older, my intuition's off a little bit. And here's what the data is telling me. Right. And so it just continues to point you in the right direction. It also just makes for great dialogue as you think about that next tactical move. Again, you're putting your energy in the right space, and you continue to see some great results from it. So we know, at least from the market that is interested in Central College, testimonials are important, right? For students to be able to see students that they can relate to and hear those outcomes messages, hear those affordability messages, to share the testimonial of parents. This is important. So it's not only the content, right, the dynamic content, but it's what's within that content
Right.
that moves the student or parent to take that next action step.
Well, I think you guys prescribe to the same thing that Capture does. We make every interaction count. So
Correct. Yeah.
whether I'm calling you as a partner or I'm working with you, helping you work with your students, every single time that we interact with you or with one of your prospective students, it's our goal to make sure that when you guys walk away from it, you feel good about it.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the biggest things. And here's going to be my last question for you. Um, you take a step back 2 years ago, just before the pandemic hit, right? So we're talking February, March of 2020. Um, things have changed over the last 2 years. Now that we've made it through 2021 and we're into 2022 and we're looking at 23 and 24, what things have you guys instituted and made changes to doing from a recruiting perspective because of the pandemic? I think
Mhm.
everything kind of sped up a little bit, right? We were kind of dabbling in digital. We weren't full crazy into digital yet as an industry.
Mhm.
I can remember, 20, 23 years ago. Now I've been doing this for 25 years. Um, when AOL had Instant Messenger, and it was like, it's
Exactly.
going to revolutionize enrollment management.
Mhm.
And then we got texting, and now we've got digital stuff, all these things. And then Capture comes along 11 years ago and just crushes the technology
Right.
forward kind of thing. And I used it at 3 different institutions, and we did
Mhm.
great with it. But what are some of those things that you guys have changed
Mhm.
in your approach and your thought process, and a piece of advice, one piece of advice
Right.
that you could give our listeners today?
Yeah, just a couple of thoughts on that. So um, we've really we had the chance to look at all of our programming and the length of that programming, and what they're doing in that space. And what we found is families are busy, students are busy. So we've adjusted some of our programming, our admitted student programming, maybe a Scholar Day event, to make it a little shorter. And it's allowed us to save money on maybe a lunch we may have had, a really nice luncheon. And we've realized that these families want the content quicker, more succinct, and they want options. So where we may have had a day program, we'll break it up into two pieces, right? So maybe we'll have a morning option, we'll have an afternoon option, and that's proved successful for us,
Mhm.
because again, works for me in the afternoon and works for me in the morning.
Sure.
Um, the other thing that I've realized, as much as texting is great and zooming, um, not neglecting the fact that a handwritten note that is spot on with who this student is, what they're doing at the right time, will always win, right? So if I can get that message to Chris to make sure we have a spot for you at our institution, based on what I know, and I list some of this stuff, and I say, I want you to join Central. This is a place I could see you being successful. Again, that will always
That's
resonate. And so Capture allows you to know some of those things that they may not readily be pulling forward. And and it's just taking all of that and putting it together and letting the admission counselors build those authentic, genuine relationships. And that will always shine through. So print will always exist.
right.
There's always room for a handwritten note. And it's not to neglect the digital and the
Mhm.
and the content, the dynamic content that's being served, but it's just a reminder of human beings want to be wanted. And expressing that in a genuine way is going to always serve your institution well.
Yeah, I think Chevy, you absolutely get it. That enrollment management is an art and a science. There's data, but there's a lot of feeling because it is someone's life that's going forward.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I love your approach. I love what you're doing at Central, and you and your team are doing fantastic stuff. So I want to thank you for today. Thank you for
Thanks,
taking the
Chris.
time
Yeah.
today, and we look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks,
All
Chevy.
right. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye.
Okay.